Dear ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, I am happy and honored to be today here and to have opportunity to share with you um, some insights about black and white and about shades of gray. So let me start actually with the story. Uh, Story on my visit to Aljuba prison in Portugal. I was asked by my colleagues, that was 2019, to deliver a public lecture on my research topic, which is transgenerational transmission of trauma related to the political repressions in the former Soviet countries during Stalin's period. I was very keen to deliver the lecture, and I went there. Actually, Aljuba prison now is turned into museum with a very nice view on the seaside, and that's dear colleague of mine, Diana Andringa, who was a dissident during Salazar's dictatorship. So she organized the event and invited a lot of dissidents who were serving their prison term in Aljuba prison. She even had her wedding ceremonies there. So that was a place with history, very meaningful for her, for me. And I started my lecture and I saw that the elderly dissidents, they were very emotional. And I became very emotional, but I became scared that I might re-traumatize them. I thought my basic assumption was that they are empathizing with the stories of repressions I am presenting. And that was stories about people killed, sent to Siberia during Lenin's Red Terror, during Stalin's Great Purge. And even at one moment, I stopped and offered water to one of the elderly ladies who was very emotional, seemingly. But at the end of my speech, one of the gentlemen in his probably late 80s stood up and pointed to me and shouted, "Liar! Go home! My Lenin, my Stalin, they are my great guys. They could not do that, what you are describing." Oh my gosh, I actually felt at home. Because, and I told that I don't need to go anywhere. I feel very much at home because in my country, history is just forgotten, and even key to the door to the history is just lost in my perception. Yeah. So let me now move to the describing my perspective, which I present today, will be from the side of, from the glasses, from the lens of psychotraumatology. So collective trauma or historical trauma, as we call it. That's about catastrophic man-made stressors like genocide, war, genocide, war, collective trauma related to severe oppression, totalitarian regimes. And this has tragic consequences, or let's say dramatic consequences for the society. So intergenerational effects and individual pathologies, mental health problems, disadvantages and inequalities within the society, they also somehow are related to the inertia of past trauma. Social pathologies, let's say mistrust, infantilism, fragmentation, collective sense of being victims of somebody's circumstances. And of course, this is very classical triangle, which most probably you all know very well. So that's aggressor, victim, and bystander, and or severe, who are rescuing somebody. So for Portuguese communists, they were kind of white. Lenin and Stalin were white, but Salazar was black. Yeah. So this At one point, at one hand, this triangle describes man-made violence-related collective trauma situation. On the other hand, it just simplifies it. So let's go further. I'm going to touch, that's actually my favorite Ukrainian artist's piece, Mona Lisa by Evgenia Gopchinska. So, collective trauma, mourning, and dealing with the past will be the first issue I will touch in my presentation. Then, division, black and white, good and bad, we and they, that's the same discourse which I'm going to touch upon. Then I will speak about case of Russia, how unprocessed past actually brought Russia to become an aggressor again, export of toxicity via hybrid war and anti-liberal movements which contribute to actually prevention of dealing with the past, which are barriers of dealing with the past. And I will touch upon briefly on possible solutions. So I would like to start with actually distinguishing. In psychology, we are distinguishing authentic mourning after collective trauma or individual trauma or family trauma happens. Mourning out your grief is so important. But mourning is not about crying. It's about multi-track, multi-stakeholder process of bringing justice, studying what happened, actually transforming emotions related to what happened and insights and meaning into art pieces, memorization strategies. So that's actually multi-track process which needs to be actually lived through. But there are also non-authentic modes of mourning, like sentimental mourning. This is sculpture which actually materialize this type of mourning. That's so-called crying father of one of the Caucasus region actually that's public school, and the crying father actually expresses huge humiliation, because in this culture, I don't name it by intention, in this culture men cannot cry. It's a huge shame. So mourning father, which is visible from the windows of the school, public school, constantly reminds about being victims of other large group, nation who victimize this group. So this does not help to deal with the collective trauma, because it just stacks the large group into mourning. Or there is a revengeful mourning when groups actually tries to do vendetta after being victimized. Or there is also victorious mourning. For example, in 2008, August, in Georgia, after Russians were stopped and Russian aggression was stopped, 5 days war, we had a huge celebration concert on the main square of Tbilisi, capital city. That was victorious mourning. Actually, after post-totalitarian societies have difficulties to have authentic mourning, because then when victimization happened, mourning was dangerous. It was hindering survival. It was not possible to mourn anything was going on. And then this inertia is still alive. So if mourning is not going in authentic way, then we are having difficulties to deal with the past, because not being able to mourn your grief just stucks you in grief. So what factors are facilitating dealing with the past? Goodwill among key stakeholders, restorative approach, paying attention to software factors like psychological factors, large group psychodynamic related factors, lustration, and of course this is not an exhaustive list of the facilitative factors, but there are factors who are preventing us from dealing with the past, and that's when former aggressor returns back and has leading positions. That's when pathological leader with so-called malignant populism starts its term. Shame as a factor, and of course external factors like hybrid war and related to hybrid war, anti-liberal movements, etc. So if the grief is not marked, if the dealing with the past is hindered, then society is stuck in historical trauma experience, and annihilation fear emerges and drives societal life. And that's about living in a survival mode. That's about survival mode versus development of the society. And there are some modes of actually patterns of action within the society, patterns of socio-political life. For example, dependency pattern, when society is seeking for messiah and making choices, for example, during elections, just seeks for messiah. Or fight and flight response within the society, when society is fragmented and divided into goodies and baddies. So black and white. So I will not go through pairing because that's another topic, but I would like to bring some ideas from Melanie Klein, that's British psychologist of the past century, who actually paid attention to black and white, decent versus evil, good versus bad, we versus they divisions, binary division, and actually she presented it as a stages of human development. In our infancy, we are actually not able to comprehend that the same object could be bad and good at the same time. For example, Melanie Klein's viral example, very famous one, she is speaking about infants' relationships with mother's breast, and if breast is full of milk, then that's good object. But the same breast, when milk is not there, it's bad object. For infant, it is not possible to imagine that that's the same breast. And she calls it paranoid schizoid position of human's development, because you are dividing, splitting the world on black and white. But the more mature position when a human being develops, that's about insight, that the object could be bad and good at the same time. That's more mature, that's about shades of gray in our language, and that's so-called depressive position in humans' development, when you realize that, well, you are becoming more wise, but more sad, yeah? That's about not clinical depression, but actually the paranoid schizoid position is very well reflected in victim, bystander, aggressors triangle. And sometimes society is just stuck in this triangle. Let's go further, and I would like to emphasize that unprocessed trauma creates fertile soil for political manipulations and for so-called malignant populism. And of course, not to be just abstract in my conclusion, I would like to bring example of Russia. Actually, I would like to show that historical traumas of the Russian society of 20th century have huge impact on psychopolitical dynamic, but the two traumas which I am going to touch upon, none of them are processed. So the first one, I would like to bring Russian journalist Vladimir Yakovlev's words. Actually, at some point in his life, he found out that his beloved grandfather was KGB, high-positioned KGB guy, and the grandmother, beloved grandmother, was agent provocateur. So he was shocked, and he tried and started to deal with the past, to reconcile with his own family's past, and told that at schools we were told about atrocities that German fascists committed, at universities about atrocities committed by Chinese Red Guards or the Cambodian Khmer Rouge. But our teachers forgot to tell us that the most terrible genocide was committed in our own country, and lived through this horror not Chinese or Koreans, but these consecutive generations, 3 generations of our own families. So by experts' estimations, that was 11 million people repressed in the Soviet Union, but even the organization memorial is no more exist to memorize this trauma. Or another thing which also was mentioned by the president's representatives this morning, Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. Of course, the World War II was huge historical trauma for the Soviet people and Russian people. But it is not processed, it is not reflected on. No insight is there, because Russia was actually similarly contributing to the the Second World War breakup, yeah, but it's never considered, never ever emerged this guilt feeling, which was kind of catharsis for the German side, but not for Russia. So, of course, Putin tried and succeeded to utilize the Soviet repressions and Second World War collective traumas related feelings to gain more power. He constructed so-called substitutive trauma because unprocessed grief was there. So what Putin did, he actually conceptualized destroying of Soviet Union, deconstruction of Soviet Union as the huge catastrophe and trauma of the Soviet people and the world, and actually he promoted the national project focused on reanimation of the Russian Empire. So this is why, if you are considering, if you are stuck in feeling of being victim, as Russia is aggressor, yeah, starting wars from Second World War or even earlier, as it is not actually processed, reflected on, reconsidered, then if you are considering you as a victim, you have so-called entitlement ideology. You allow yourself to kill other people because you are such a famous victim. You are allowed to do everything. So victimhood is very dangerous in this regard. This is Mariupol, and we know that for 2.5 years now, and probably more, Ukraine is bombed and people are killed. For Georgia, that was 5 days, but hybrid war is going on much longer, for decades. Yeah. So developments. What developments allowed actually Putin to go to end up in the open war with Ukraine? So in 2013, he ordered to produce a single-track history handbook. So he unified history and erased actually Russian guilt or anything in the Second World War history. So that's the story, contemporary Russian history handbook, about savior of the world, about, on the one hand, victim who was not acknowledged enough by the West, and on the other hand, savior of the West, who needs to celebrate victory and saving other nations. So enemy image towards NATO, towards the West, and his words when he started war against a full-scale invasion of Ukraine, it's steadily NATO is steadily expanding. The military machine is moving and approaching our borders. So he does not have any other choice but starts war. Savior and fighter against external and internal enemies. And internal enemies are especially interesting in this context. That's actually non-believers in his national project. And here I have informed consent from Robert. When Putin's foreign agent law was introduced, that's actually memorials of his. So that's about actually Faulkner's phrase, if past is not dealt with, that's even not past. It just returned back. So in Soviet period, that was Trotsky's stigma, that was people's enemy stigma, that was counter-revolutionary element stigma. Actually, that was also dehumanizing people who were killed. And now it's foreign agent, yeah? Interesting is that this is, we know, exported to the world, to the different countries. Georgia is one of the targets. So in 2003, there was an attempt to introduce foreign agent law in Georgia. In 2024, and it was huge protest, and it was just stopped for a while. And this year again, it was introduced by parliament, by majority of votes, and mass protests, like several 100,000 people were in the street in May, but now we are waiting for elections to change the situation, because that's malignant development, because that's agent today. For example, people like me in my country, we are called agentura. Whose are agents we are, serving our people, our country for decades. Actually, that's it. We of course, Russia exports by a hybrid war, exports toxic, actually, socio-political developments in other countries, funding ultranationalistic groups, and lots of things are going on. But we are having our know-how also. If you just Google Wikipedia global war parties, that's Georgian invention, and you can read that. That's a conspiracy theory created and advanced by the Georgian political party Georgian Dream. It is an alleged mysterious international organization exerting a key influence on the European Union and United States. So we are global war parties, actually, agents. And Prime Minister has portrayed his government as a fight against the global war party, and he states that there is no alternative to the fight against global war party. It's a very painful, difficult fight, etc., etc., etc. So typical conspiracy theory. So that's about unprocessed trauma also of Georgian nation. So society becomes trapped in the so-called Bermuda Triangle: savior, aggressor, victim, black, white, no shades of gray. And what are possible solutions then? Of course, I am not the one who is going to give any recipes. And I am going to just speak about principles, how to work on it, how to promote. Being informed, as Robert told, is crucial. And I think being not disinformed, Robert's Van Norda is going to speak about it. But to have multi-track actually process switched on and processed with patience and with passion, that's about justice, doing psychological, material, procedural satisfaction of victims, and also lustration of aggressors, and justice process should go on. Cultural rituals for grief, for mourning out grief, is very important. Memorization policies are very important. Academic studies, very important, and these kind of conferences are inspiring us for that. Art, symbolization of losses, multiple losses related to collective traumas, and mental health, not last but not least, yeah, infrastructure for mental health care. And actually, by intention, I brought this Picasso's Guernica piece. I loved, yesterday evening, we had lovely reception at Dutch ambassador's place, and he told that why gray, why not colorful? Actually, I cannot agree more. Of course, there are a lot of colors, and actually, recent development, anti-liberal developments, exactly try to reject colorful, multidimensional world and to do it black and white. But I was impressed that Picasso decided to make it gray, actually. Yeah, to show this tragedy. And yeah, so that's not colorful painting. So somehow resonates with our topic. And what actually we need to do, not to do, but that's about principles. So to pay attention to so-called software factors. Psychological factors are very important, especially taking into consideration hybrid war. Psychological factors are have leading impacts there. To initiate multi-track processes, to collaborate internationally, because today was mentioned Nuremberg process, for example. Without pressure from the international community, we cannot actually do effective work in dealing with the past. To be alert towards toxic leadership at earlier stages and actually address corresponding professional dilemmas. For example, in America, there was a book published when Donald Trump was elected in 2017, The Dangerous Case of Donald Trump. Actually, that was book by mental health professionals. And by our ethical code, we cannot diagnose anybody. But there was 27 brave professionals in the United States, and they decided to say that they consider Donald Trump as dangerous because of his very severe mental health problems, a social type. Yeah, and yeah, we need to mind hybrid war because sometimes it's invisible. It's actually conceptualized by radiation war because you cannot smell it. Sometimes you cannot see it, but the consequences are almost deadly. Yeah. Thank you very much for your attention.